I welcome you to News Once Was, a journey to the past to discover the forgotten lives of those eternally trapped in ink and shackled to the dusty pages of newspaper print. First of January, 1813. Monday morning, Edith Morey, the unfortunate woman convicted at the last Chester Assizes of the murder of her husband at Huncolo and respited on her plea of pregnancy, was brought to bed of a male child in the castle. Of course, her execution will take place in 1 month from the time of her delivery. First of January, 1813. A clergyman who had undertaken the parochial duty in Hants during the necessary absence of the incumbent for the last 3 months, absconded lately after defrauding 26 tradesmen of their goods, borrowing money of several persons, and leaving a wife and child penniless. The inhabitants raised a subscription to defray the expense of sending the poor woman to London, where she has friends. First of January, 1813. Isabella Astwood of Grewellthorpe, near Masham, was committed to Wakefield House of Correction for 1 year by Dr. Colthurst, Joseph Priestley, and Michael Stocks, Esquires at Halifax, on Saturday the 12th. This woman had been for months strolling about the country as a preacher, but in the midst of her ministerial career, she was delivered of a bastard child at Ovenden and put into ward as a lewd and disorderly woman. of January, 1813. The Giant, never seen in Liverpool before, to be seen at Mr. James's rooms, bottom of Lord Street. That most wonderful and surprising Yorkshire giant, 7 feet 8 inches high, weighs upwards of 27 stone, who has had the honour of being introduced to their Majesties and royal family at Windsor, where he was most graciously received. A more surprising instance of gigantic stature was never beheld or exhibited in this or any other the kingdom, being proportionate in all respects, the sight of whom never failed to give universal satisfaction, and fill the beholder with wonder and astonishment. He is allowed by the first judges to surpass all men ever yet seen. Admittance, 1 shilling. Eighth of January, 1813. Smyrna, October the 26th. It is with extreme affliction that our resident at Smyrna mentions the ravages of the plague. Not fewer than 3,000 a day in Constantinople, and all intercourse is at present interrupted. Eighth of January, 1813. A dreadful accident. On Sunday fortnight, 26 persons were unfortunately drowned by the breaking of the ice at Duxbury, near Chorley. It was occasioned by 2 men fighting, when the people gathering together on the ice to witness the fray, the ice gave way, and the above persons lost their lives. January 15th, 1813. The celebrated Miss Beffin, miniature painter, now exhibiting her wonderful powers in a commodious room at the Auction Mart, Castle Street. This young lady was born deficient of arms, hands, and legs. She can cut out and make any part of her own clothes, sews extremely neat and in a most wonderful manner, writes well, draws landscapes, paints miniatures, and many more wonderful things, all of which she performs principally with her mouth. Admission 1 shilling each from 11 in the morning. January 15th, 1813. On Thursday, December the 31st, just about the time that workmen were about to leave their work in the King's Dockyard at Woolwich, the steam engine that has been erected for bending timber for building ships with burst with a dreadful explosion, driving everything before it. 7 or 8 men were killed on the spot, and a great number had their limbs broken and were otherwise badly wounded. The buildings adjoining were also very much damaged. January 15th, 1813. Longevity. There is now living at the house of Mr. John Matthews, gardener, Armagh, a woman named Mary O'Brien, aged 105. 4 generations of her lineal descendants reside with her. There is a probability from her health and strength that she may live to see her granddaughter's grandchild, when she may be able to say, "Rise up, daughter, go to your daughter, for your daughter's daughter has got a daughter." Old Jenkins, the Englishman, lived to the vast age of 169. It is a curious speculation that if 33 men were each successfully to attain the age of Jenkins, one coming into the world at the precise moment his immediate predecessor left it, the first of these venerable personages might have shaken hands with Adam, and the remotest of the 35 such personages would have been coeval with the world. January 22nd, 1813. The Journal de Paris, December 9th, says, a French officer found on the 24th of September, on the field of battle at Majesk, a Russian who had both his legs carried away and who had remained in that state for 17 days, feeding on the flesh of a horse which had been killed beside him. January 22nd, 1813. Lucis naturae. A calf has been taken out of the side of a cow belonging to Mr. Wright of Cleasby, near Darlington, having 2 heads. One of the heads resembles that of a greyhound, and the other that of a codfish. The head is at one end of the animal, and the other at the other end. It has an exact calf's tail coming out from the middle of the cod's head, and the 4 legs resemble a calf's. The cow was some months over her time, but after getting quit of this animal is doing well. The circumstance is supposed to have been caused by her taking fright at a greyhound going suddenly into the byre with a cod's head in its mouth. January 29th, 1813. As a party of boys, 18 in number, were amusing themselves last week, in Battle, near Sussex, by sliding on the ice over a pond which was remarkably deep. It suddenly gave way, and the whole were drowned. February 5th, 1813. Extraordinary funeral. Mr. Henry Woodford, who lately died at his house in New Street Square, near Fleet Street, has been for upwards of 50 years a member of the celebrated society called the Lumber Troop, held in that neighborhood. He has for 20 years past been possessed of a crooked guinea, which he always said should be spent for the benefit of the society, namely, in 4 crown bowls of punch and 1 shilling's worth of tobacco, upon condition that his coffin should be conveyed into the room where the company assembled, the punch drunk previous to the burial, and a small cannon, of which the society are in possession of several, to be fired over his body. The conditions of his will in this respect are to be strictly obeyed. February 5th, 1813. As Mr. Inman, a gentleman from Bristol, was returning from the bank in company with a friend on the corner of Buxelberry, Walbrook, he made a sudden halt and instantly dropped down dead. His body was immediately conveyed into a neighbouring house and afterwards removed to Walbrook Church, where it now remains. The deceased had nearly £10,000 in his hands when he fell, which property is secured. February 12th, 1813. A codfish was lately sold in Leith Market, weighing £55 English. When opened, it was found to contain a full-grown haddock, a whiting of the largest sort, a large crab, and a sole. The haddock and whiting were quite entire, and in their fins were a hook and a piece of fishing line. The crab and sole were rather decayed. The whole lot of fishes was sold for 4 shillings. March 5th, 1813. Remarkable occurrence. An extraordinary instance of deviation from the usual course of nature has occurred in the neighbourhood of Portsmouth. A perfectly white rat was lately caught in a gin in a barn belonging to R.W. Missing, Esquire, of Posbrook Cottage, which has been carefully stuffed and preserved as a fit subject for the British Museum. March 5th, 1813. A shocking accident happened at Lewisham during the high wind last Thursday week. A stack of chimneys was blown down at the house of Mrs. Corbett, a seminary for young ladies, and one of the young ladies was killed on the spot. Others also suffered severely by broken limbs and contusions. March 5th, 1813. The following inscription is on a tomb in the churchyard at Ware, Hertfordshire. In memory of W. M. Mead, M.D., who departed this life the 26th of October, 1652, aged 148 years and 9 months. Old Parr died in the year 1634, aged 152 years. Henry Jenkins died in 1670, aged 169. Both of whom are recorded in the chronology of remarkable events in the almanacs so that these three old men died in the 17th century within the space of 36 years. March 5th, 1813. On Friday, the 5th, as the Reverend Mr. Gardiner of East Dean was standing on the cliff at Beachy Head, looking towards the sea, he perceived the ground, as he thought, moving under his feet, and looking down discovered a considerable opening both to the east and west, which greatly alarmed him. He, however, instantly quitted the spot whereon he was standing, stepped over the chasm, and thus escaped the danger that threatened him, as a large portion of the cliff, 400 feet high, presently afterwards gave way, and fell on the beach below, extending its ruins almost to the low water mark. The fallen apart, it has been since ascertained, was in length 370 feet, and in breadth 84 feet, and the chalk and earth of which it was composed has been computed at 303,088 cubic yards. The earth moved very slow at first, but after sinking a few feet, its motion became very rapid, and the noise of its fall is supposed to have been heard at Eastbourne and East Dean. A large quantity of spar, of a beautiful white shining colour, has been picked up from among the chalk and preserved for the cabinets of the curious. March 5th, 1813. A lamentable case of parricide occurred at Carnwath the end of last week. A young man named Atkin, having returned home from an alehouse and being reproved, on account of his dissipation, by his father, impiously lifted his hand against his parent, and with one blow killed him on the spot. March 5th, 1813. Poison in wild honey. 2 persons were last month poisoned in New York by eating wild honey. Dr. Hozak of that city, who visited them, said that wild honey was poisonous in consequence of the bees feeding upon the flowers of poisonous plants, such as the dwarf laurels, with which the American woods abound. March 12th, 1813. Lately, George Evans of Brigg, a gardener, drank a bottle of clear rum at a draught, the consequence of which that he died on Monday. March 12th, 1813. During the stormy night on the 17th, the lightning struck the chimney of Mr. Bowdler's dwelling house at Drayton, near Roxeter, penetrated the roof, and glanced through the bedroom wherein 5 women slept, tearing the tester from one of the beds, and passed down into the kitchen, where it shivered into pieces various articles of furniture. It then entered an adjoining cow-house, in which were 13 cows, and killed only one, which, it is conjectured, was lying down. The windows of the house were broken, and some of the casements hurled to a considerable distance. No individual was hurt. April 9th, 1813. Lately, as some labourers were employed in digging some gravel, about a quarter of a mile from St. Albans, they discovered a stone resembling a coffin, which upon examination proved to contain the bones of a human body. In its right hand was fixed a lamp, and near it was a bottle of liquid which Lord Grimstone has now in his possession, besides a glass. Some professional gentlemen have examined the skeleton, and they concur in opinion that it was a female and must have lain in the earth a great number of years. April 9th, 1813. A few days ago, as one of the insane patients at Bethel was mowing the grass, which he had been accustomed to, the governor came up to him and observed he did not think he was mowing it the right way. This gave him so much offense that he immediately struck at him with the sharp end of the scythe, which penetrated into his body, making an extensive wound. But fortunately the intestines were not injured, and he is in a fair way of being well, but not out of danger. April 9th, 1813. A Dutch paper says that the vessel, young Cornelius, was frozen in the Zuiderzee at the extremity of the Isle of Leland on the 16th of December, in such a situation that for 16 days she could not communicate with the shore. During this period, the crew, having exhausted their provisions, devoured the dogs and cats on board, shoes, and every article made of leather, and were at length reduced to the horrid necessity of prolonging existence by feeding upon the dead bodies of two of their companions. April 9th, 1813. Threatened destruction of a town in Switzerland. The following letter describes a calamity which has probably been consummated by this time. It is the destruction of a part of a town built upon the borders of the celebrated Lake Constance by the waters excavating the surrounding land. St. Gall, Switzerland, March the 8th. We learn from Constance that a frightful calamity threatens the town of Ubelingen. For more than 8 days it was perceived that the ground upon the borders of the lake had sunk, and this phenomenon was announced in a manner so alarming that the inhabitants, after having secured their cattle, fled from their dwellings. This presentiment of danger has been realized. On the 16th and 17th, 13 houses gradually sunk into the abyss and disappeared. On the 18th, the convent of Capuchins, so well known for its hospitable reception of travelers and strangers, merged into the abyss 14 feet and threatened to disappear gradually from sight. Other houses have since sunk many feet. Everyone is under the greatest alarm. It is feared that the whole town touches the moment of its destruction. April 9th, 1813. A dreadful hailstorm was experienced at Vienna on the 28th of January, which beat down 22 houses and killed 15 persons and maimed and wounded vast numbers of cattle in the fields. April 15th, 1813. On Thursday was executed at Exeter T. Luscombe for the murder of Sarah Ford. This desperado also confessed having committed that foul and unparalleled murder on Margaret Huxtable of Dodbrooke, an infant of 11 years of age, whom he ravished and then put to death in a manner too shocking for description. He also confessed having murdered a woman near Lipson, with whom he had travelled, and offered to point out the spot where he had buried her. He also confessed having murdered the servant of Mr. Phelps at Plymouth Dock, and indeed acknowledged having committed a string of murders in the neighbourhood, which must make every friend to humanity rejoice at the death of so atrocious a criminal. "15th of April, 1813. A correspondent writes from Church Landford, Warwickshire, that about a fortnight ago a most astonishing discovery was made by a person of the name of Thomas Ingram, who, in digging 15 feet below the surface of the earth, found a large head, in perfect state and free from decay, of an animal measuring 3 feet in length. One tooth weighed 2.5 pounds, and the eye sockets and nostrils 9 inches over. It has attracted all the connoisseurs around the place, who were baffled with conjecture. "23rd of April, 1813. A lady of decent appearance was a few days since pointed out in the Westminster Road as Lady Donglass. She was instantly followed by a considerable crowd, and only escaped their abuse by getting into a hackney coach, which drove off amidst loud groans and hisses." 23rd of April, 1813. The following occurrence has been communicated to us by a respectable correspondent. Last week an ewe belonging to Mr. W. M. Lacey of Lingham, near Scarborough, yielded 5 lambs from the Hull packet. 23rd of April, 1813. An awful catastrophe happened on the 12th in the Bay of Bruckless, county of Donegal. An unusual appearance of herrings, which for several years past had deserted these shores, had collected all the boats of the southern coast to the bay. In the nights when the boats were deeply laden, a storm arose, the boats were unmanageable in a moment, all was confusion, and death spread his terrors around. Nearly 60 boats were wrecked. Of some or all of their crews, not a vestige remained. The morning presented a most dismal spectacle of mangled corpses, torn nets, and wrecks of boats. 42 industrious fishermen, who had left their families the preceding evening with the cheering prospect of returning with the means of a comfortable subsistence, were brought home corpses. The afflicting detail of the sufferings of individual families would far exceed the limits of a newspaper. Let 1 or 2 suffice. The writer of this article attended the funeral of a young man. His wife, far advanced in pregnancy, rode beside the coffin. She had left in her house the corpses of her father and brother, and in the adjoining houses those of her brother-in-law, uncle, and 2 cousins. The lease of this farm, now the abode of 6 widows and 24 orphans, expired with the life of one of these sufferers. A man far advanced in years has lost his 3 sons, 2 of whom have left their widows, and 13 young children. In fine, each individual family could burden a tale of misery and distress. The total number of the widows of the sufferers amounts to 50. Of their children, 102. The gentlemen in the neighbourhood have proposed a subscription for the suffering survivors. From the Dublin Evening Post. April 23, 1813. Cotton, a remedy for burns and scalds. The Baltimore Medical and Philosophical Lyceum contains an account of an accidental discovery of this virtue in cotton by the wife of Captain R, who, in a fright, caught up a large bundle of cotton and applied it over the whole of the scalded parts of a beloved child, upon whom a large kettle of boiling water had fallen while she was standing before a kitchen fire. Soon after this, the tortured and screaming infant became perfectly quiet and fell into a gentle and easy slumber. The cotton was suffered to remain on several hours, and when it was removed, there was not the least appearance of inflammation remaining. Several other persons, who at first had no faith in this remedy, have also tried it in similar cases, and it is likewise supposed to have some efficiency in removing rheumatic pains. April 30, 1813. The unfortunate cook of the captain, who lost his life in the late conflagration of that ship in Hamoz, once saved the life of the immortal Nelson, and was always honoured with the particular notice and patronage of that hero. In boarding the San Nicolas, in the battle off Cape St. Vincent, a Spanish lieutenant aimed a blow at Nelson, who was engaged with another officer, and would, beyond all doubt, have killed him, but for the gallantry of this cook, then a common seaman, who rushed to his assistance and received the destined stroke, which deprived him of 3 of his fingers of his right hand. Grateful to his deliverer, the hero strongly recommended him to the notice of the Admiralty, and he would have been a gunner but for his almost continual intoxication. With this propensity to liquor, he lost his life, and occasioned the loss of a ship which once triumphantly bore the flag of our greatest naval commander. April 30, 1813. A curious defence was lately set up by a man at the New Bailey at Manchester against a charge of bigamy. The man acknowledged that 2 women, to whom he had been married, were both living, but that he had disposed of the first before he was married to the second. To establish this fact, he stated that he had sold the former for the sum of 5 shillings at the Market Cross in Bury, and proved the fact by the evidence of his receipt for that sum, which was read in court for that purpose. The following is a copy of the document. Received on the of A.B. the sum of 5 shillings, the consideration or purchase for C.D. my wife, sold to him this day, by and with her assent, at the Market Cross in Bury. Witness my hand, D.D. April 30, 1813. The advance of wages with no class of society has risen so high as with common hangmen. 13 pence halfpenny was the sum originally allowed for performing the office, whereas at the last assizes for Devonshire, when the wretched murderer Luscombe suffered death at the New Drop, Jack Ketch would not undertake the awful job under 12 guineas and all his travelling expenses from Hampshire. April 30, 1813. Died, lately aged 73, Mrs. Wright, widow of the late Mr. Thomas Wright, Throster, in Norwich. About a fortnight since, whilst at work in the evening, she cut the snuff of the candle with her scissors, which fell on her clothes, and set fire to them, by which she was so much burnt by the flames, that after lingering in great pain, she at length died in consequence. April 30th, 1813. Died on the 6th, aged 14, Master Samuel Fairbairn, son of the artist. The child, about 2 months since, complained to one of his schoolfellows of a stiff neck. He attempted to relieve his young friend by suspending him by his chin and showing him London, as it's called. It appeared on investigation, after his decease, that the second vertebrae was wrenched from the others nearly an inch, by which means the head was pushed forward, the ligaments torn, and an abscess formed between them and the windpipe. April 30th, 1813. On Tuesday week, Thomas Tallant, who made his escape from the jail in this town about 3 years ago, after receiving a sentence of transportation for picking the pocket of a gentleman of the name of Hutchinson, was apprehended in Doncaster, very unexpectedly meeting with the person whose pocket he had picked, and who caused him to be immediately seized. April 30th, 1813. On Tuesday night, an unfinished house in the neighbourhood of Circus Street, Liverpool, was blown down. May 7th, 1813. Wanton cruelty. On Monday last, a butcher who was driving a calf near the bottom of Red Cross Street in order to get the exhausted animal forward, inflicted such violent kicks and blows with his fist that the poor creature died on the spot. May 7th, 1813. Attack on the Queen. An unfortunate insane female of the name of Davenport, who held the situation of assistant mistress of the wardrobe, was seized on Sunday morning about 5 o'clock with a fit of derangement, and rushed to the Queen's bedroom, calling violently on the Queen of England to redress her wrongs. She used so much violence as to burst open the outer door. It was with difficulty she could be secured. Dr. Willis was sent for, who ordered her a strait waistcoat, and she was sent in a post-chaise to the house at Hoxton for insane persons. May 7th, 1813. Riot at the Opera. A serious and disgraceful disturbance at the King's Theatre, London, occurred last Saturday evening, proceeding from a call for a reappearance of Catalani. The tumult became so outrageous that a party of the guards was called in to clear the stage, which was crowded with persons from the boxes and pit, and a scuffle ensued. The soldiers were surrounded and in many instances disarmed, the muskets and bayonets being thrown into the orchestra. After some explanation from Mr. Kinnaird, the ballet was about to recommence, when the indecency of one person, who obstinately kept possession of the stage, again excited an uproar, which continued until the audience departed. Many noblemen in high official situations were present, and among the rest Lord Yarmouth, who promised the interference of his father, the Lord Chamberlain, to forward the objects desired to be obtained by the courtly rioters. The whole scene reflects the highest disgrace upon the manners of those who ought to be considered as the most respectable class of society. May 14th, 1813. A melancholy fact. In consequence of the double duty on glass, a great number of working people have been thrown out of employment at the extensive plate glass works near St. Helens. A short time ago, not a single person in that neighborhood was unemployed, but at present there are not less than 150 destitute of the means of earning a livelihood. May 14th, 1813. A melancholy circumstance took place lately at Whitecroft, Sheffield. A soldier, having arrived with a deserter, put down his firelock, which was loaded, when a young man, taking it up, not knowing it was charged, in a joke, presented the piece at his sweetheart and shot her through the body. She lingered till the next day in the greatest agony. May 21st, 1813. A short time since, a poor infirm man, aged 103, from Yorkshire, was delivered into the custody of the Marshal of the King's Bench for a debt of £20. The poor man's apprehensions were so great on entering the prison that he was seized with a sudden and violent illness, which induced the Marshal, on a representation of the case, to have him removed to a comfortable apartment in Belvedere Place. But, notwithstanding every alleviation which humanity could suggest was promptly administered, he expired the same evening. May 21st, 1813. Christiana Joystafter of Holkerup in Zealand was lately convicted before the Danish Supreme Court of Justice of having poisoned her father. Her sentence was that she should be conveyed from her father's residence to the place of execution, and during the procession tortured 5 times with red-hot pincers, then to have both her hands struck off, and afterwards to be beheaded. Eilert Hansen, convicted of being accessory to the atrocious deed, was at the same time sentenced to lose her head. May 21st, 1813. A singular phenomenon appeared in the neighbourhood of Epping, in Essex, yesterday week, by the trees in all the gardens and orchards being covered with locusts and other winged insects, supposed to have been the consequence of the preceding night's tempest. From May 15th. May 21st, 1813. About a week or a fortnight ago, an inhuman wretch had, by night, placed a newborn babe close to a farmer's pigsty in the townland of Benagh. In the morning, the poor infant was found surrounded by the swine. A large mastiff dog belonging to the farmer stood over it, and like a faithful guardian kept all the voracious animals at a distance. The babe was found alive in this extraordinary situation. It has been since baptized by the name of John Benagh and sent to the Foundling Hospital in Dublin. May 28th, 1813. In Oxfordshire and some of the adjoining counties, the poor are allowed to cultivate the sides of the road and wasteland. We hope the example will be followed by the commissioners generally, as the poor will then be able to provide themselves with vegetables, particularly that useful root, the potato, which will both tend to lessen the consumption of bread and also prevent them from becoming so burdensome to the parish. May 28th, 1813. A sailor lately tumbled from the shrouds of a vessel in the Downs, and in his fall threw his captain upon the deck. The latter, recovering his feet, exclaimed, "Where have you come from?" "From the north of Ireland, your honour," answered Pat, very composedly. May 28th, 1813. The nephew of a British peer was executed at Lisbon on the 7th. He had involved himself by gambling, and being detected in the act of robbing the house of his English friend by a Portuguese servant, he shot the latter dead to prevent discovery. After execution, his head was severed from his body and fixed on a pole opposite the house in which the murder and robbery were committed. May 28th, 1813. Thursday morning, a stranger of more than common magnitude in the piscatory tribe was brought to our market for sale. A sturgeon, which for weight and length surpasses any fish of the kind ever seen here. It is 8 feet 4 inches from the nose to the end of the tail, and weighs upwards of 200 pounds. It was taken near Ince by the shrimp catchers at ebb tide. It is a she-fish and contained about 70 pound weight of spawn. Manchester, May 22nd. May 28th, 1813. The cow and her pigs. Mr. Thomas Ade, a respectable yeoman of Milton, near Lewes, has a cow that, on having her calf taken from her about 6 weeks ago, seduced 2 very young pigs from a farrow of 6, which, with the sow, were running in the same close, and has ever since suckled and nurtured them as her own, and is now so excessively fond of them that under a temporary separation, a few days since, she betrayed the strongest symptoms of uneasiness, bellowed incessantly, and actually leaped a high hedge to recover her little grunting charge. The pigs are equally fond of the cow, and on her milk they thrive rapidly. May 28th, 1813. An honest Cambrian, having lately lost his cow, as the most effectual means of recovering the same, circulated a printed handbill, of which the following is a literal copy. This was to give notice public that Evan Davies was loosed her cush out of her packside at Landeglo. Her cush was have 4 plack legs and a plack tail, and was loosed 1 teeth out of her mouth, and her cush was very fond to keep peoples who was comed nigh her. Evan Davis was thought very oft what is co from her packside, because Evan Davis was always give her so much met as was fill her pelly, which was make Evan Davis to think that some very bad meaning person was stoled her, and who heifer will bring her cush back again shall have so much bread and cheese as her can put in her pelly without pay nothing for it. God save the king, and her kush has only cut one eye. May 28th, 1813. A very interesting and extraordinary operation has recently been successfully performed by Mr. Lin on a man who had lost the whole of his underlip by a cancer. The operation was conducted on the principle of a known practice in India of restoring a lost nose by means of the adjacent skin being raised from the flesh, and after being scarified and folded over, is made to form the part required, taking care to preserve the circulation of the blood. In this instance, the skin was brought up from the throat, and the lip is so perfectly formed that the man can pronounce M and P quite distinct, and from being an object of misery to himself and disgust, to others there is now scarcely any blemish to be observed. May 28th, 1813. A shocking circumstance occurred at Sleaford last week. A fine girl, about 13 years of age, whilst witnessing an exhibition of wild beasts, approached too near the cage in which a lion was confined, when the ferocious animal suddenly thrust one of its paws through the wire of his prison and lacerated the girl's head dreadfully with his talons. May 28th, 1813. On Wednesday evening last, a young girl belonging to one of the flats was drowned in the canal near the Bootle Coffee House Bridge. It is supposed she fell in while attempting to get some water. Several minutes elapsed before she was missed, and though, on the alarm being given, a gentleman immediately drew her out, it was too late. Every exertion was used to recover animation, but in vain. June 4th, 1813. A few days since, the child of a fruiterer in the Surrey Road applied to her governess for directions in her work, and while the latter was exhibiting the method of drawing the stitch, the needle penetrated the ball of the poor child's eye, and of course deprived it of sight. June 4th, 1813. Extraordinary circumstance. A parrot belonging to Mr. Cliff of Peel Hall, near Tarvin, which has been in his possession 11 years, this year laid 2 eggs. June 4th, 1813. A most extraordinary operation has lately been performed in Cork. A female, about the age of 50, who had for years laboured under a constant headache, which, notwithstanding the use of every remedy suggested to her, continued to increase, and at length attained to that degree of violence that it became necessary to remove a portion of the skull, the entire of the forehead, and most of the upper part of which has been taken away. Since the operation, about 2 months, the pain has entirely ceased. Her general state of health has much improved, and she has now every prospect of a most perfect recovery. What is very remarkable, with little or scarcely any appearance of deformity from the observer. June 11th, 1813. On Wednesday nights, some diabolical wretch or wretches administered a quantity of poison to 8 pigs belonging to Mr. Scott of the Woodman Inn, Wakefield, 6 of which are dead. It is supposed that arsenic had been mixed up with the oatmeal in the form of balls and thrown over the wall into a backyard in which the pigs were accustomed to run. We sincerely hope that the villains will be discovered and meet their just reward. Please feel free to like and subscribe.